I'm in the cockpit of an Air Force trainer jet. A qualified pilot sits to my right. I'm at the controls of this plane, and we're coming in for a landing. Through my headset, I hear the control tower call me, "On final, go around," which means I'm not allowed to land, but I can come around and try again if I'd like. The pilot next to me says, "My aircraft," jerking the stick of his dual controls to indicate he's now in charge of the plane. He slams the throttles forward, accelerating the plane away from the ground. This is Air Force pilot training. I'm a young lieutenant fighting to become a qualified pilot like my instructor, who is now yelling at me. "Barrett, are you even looking outside the cockpit? Even the control tower can tell you're not lined up on center line. Pull your head out." You see, it's while I'm in pilot training, I discovered I was exceptionally bad at landings. I had the distinct honor of being the first student in my pilot training class to receive the grade of unsatisfactory for my landings. I also had the distinct honor of being the second student in my pilot training class to receive the grade of unsatisfactory for my landings. The problem was, with each unsatisfactory landing, I was one ride closer to not being a pilot, and with each unsatisfactory landing, I was shortening the list of instructors who were willing to fly with me. The next day is a new day with an instructor from the short list. There's a piece of paper on the table between us, but I don't need to look at the paper because I know my instructor is drawing everything to do with landing a plane. "Barrett, are you paying attention?" "Yes, sir." I decide to comply, and I see that he is, in fact, drawing the only landing technique any instructor ever teaches: centerline, aim point, airspeed. His drawing has all the elements, a runway, the center line, an X for the aim point, and there's something else. Is that a barn? Yeah. Well, what about center line, aim point, airspeed? The center line is your most important focus. You have to land the plane on center line to keep the plane on the runway and clear of any obstacles beyond the runway. And the barn? That imaginary barn will help you focus your efforts. Put your aim point right inside those front doors, and when you get down there, fly through the barn, then transition to land. Oh my God, is this guy kidding me? There are a ton of things involved with landing a plane. I have to compensate for the wind. I have to listen and respond to air traffic control. I have to look out for the aircraft, which are being flown by other unqualified pilot wannabes. I have to deal with the quirks of that particular plane on that particular day, and never mind the chatter inside my head, doubting me in my own fight to become a pilot. Oh, and I have to remember to pull my head out. So, off we go on another training flight. I'm coming in to land. Aim point, picked out. Airspeed, under control. Centerline, close. But wait, the barn. The barn. I can actually see the barn. I can make out rust-red paint peeling from the wooden sides. I can see daylight flooding in through those far open doors. I can even pick up trace scents of hay and a hint of manure. With my focus on the center line, I glide through and touch down somewhat gracefully. For the next hour, we do touch and goes, back-to-back takeoffs and landings. And my landings are, well, they're not unsatisfactory. No one outside the cockpit had to intervene and order me to go around and try again. No one from inside the cockpit had to take control and fly the plane. I was able to overcome the distractions that had prevented me from landing on centerline. And what I learned that day has guided my life from that moment forward. If we don't fight for the center lines of our life, someone else will. We will all be challenged to see how committed we are to staying on our path. A pilot fights to keep the plane within the boundaries of the runway. The runway of life, extended out in front of us, also has boundaries, laws, policies, cultural norms, maybe even family expectations. And as we navigate life, we choose or inherit different roles and responsibilities: parent, teacher, child, coach, manager. Each has its own center line, that sweet spot of alignment of how we want to live that role. And like the pilot, we deal with inputs that challenge our commitment and focus. Maybe it's the noise of feedback we get from others or ourselves, or the moment-to-moment diversions that need to be sequenced into our day. Our lives are filled with a constant conflict of destructive and cooperative influences. By continually fighting for centerline, we work toward balance in individual elements of our life in pursuit of overall personal equilibrium. It's like going to the dentist for a regular checkup instead of waiting for the pain of a cavity to set in. Or taking preventative steps with couples counseling rather than waiting for another round of he said, she said. Or she said, or he said. How do we fight for centerline when the world is relentlessly challenging us? We start here. 3 tactics. First, we need to pull our head out. I'm sitting by the airport restrooms. Don't judge. There's a restroom for the men on the left and the ladies on the right. A man checking his cell phone absent-mindedly walks into the ladies' room. Seeing him do this, the woman behind him chooses the door on the left, which she presumes is not the men's room, but it is. Just so we're caught up, a man has walked into the ladies' room and a lady has walked into the men's room. The woman must have figured out her mistake because she quickly comes back out. But before she can walk into the correct restroom, another man, seeing a woman come out of the door on the left, assumes that must be the ladies' room, so chooses door number 1. The wrong door. The woman, having seen the wall-mounted toilets in the ladies' room, but then seeing 2 men go into the right room, as in on the right, now looks very confused and flees the scene. Long story short, no, it's too late. I watched no fewer than 4 men go into the ladies' room and 3 ladies go into the men's room before the next contestant on toilet or urinal simply verifies restroom accuracy by cross-checking the label on the door. How many times have we caught ourselves on autopilot with our heads down, following the lead of others, stuck in habitual patterns? When I catch myself living like this, I can still hear my instructor pilot yelling at me, "Barrett, pull your head out." Even out of the cockpit, that's good advice. Take a step back, see the bigger picture, verify the path we're on, assess where we are in that journey, and recognize any possible option for action. Maybe it's taking the time to genuinely interact and connect with a stranger, neighbor, or a friend. It's finding the perfect moments in our everyday lives when we have the chance to outdo the way we're living a particular role. Second tactic, just step over it. On Air Force bases, aircraft are parked in a restricted area, which is marked by a wide red stripe painted around the parking area. From the time that we start the transfusion of Air Force Blue into our blood, we learn that to enter or exit a restricted area, you do so by passing through an entry control point, which is essentially a white painted section in the red border. Stepping on red lines on Air Force flight lines will win you some face time with the pavement, while a security forces dude ensures you stay cheek to cheek with the tarmac. Bottom line, you do not step over red lines. I'm leaving my aircraft after having flown onto a naval air station and parked in their restricted area. I go to where the entry control point should be, and I find only more red painted line. I try another possible option, and same result. And another. Soon, a naval security dude comes driving up, smirking as he notices the Air Force invasion on his nautical turf. Having trouble, Lieutenant? Yeah, how do I get over this red line? Ma'am, just step over it. Smart ass. Like it was that simple. But it was. See, on naval flight lines, they're less rigid about flight line security. They assume if you have access to the flight line and then you know what you're doing, so if you need to get into or out of the restricted area, you just step over the red line. We are so afraid to step in it that we lose sight of the option to step over it. This means stepping over self-doubt, naysayers, obstacles, maybe even a lack of motivation, whatever your red line is. So the next time you hesitate to write that business proposal that you told your boss you already finished, Step over that lie and start writing. The next time you hesitate to share your feelings with someone, step over that reluctance and profess your gratitude for them. I will now step over tactic number 2 into number 3. Check your crew. As we do this thing called life, we are not flying solo. We are surrounded by friends, family, authority figures, stalkers. I was just seeing if they're still listening. We are surrounded by people we choose as well as those we don't. Long before I was failing at flying or bounded by red-painted lines, I was chaotically navigating high school. It's the middle of the school day. I'm wandering the halls. An authority figure rounds the corner, so I evade into the Career Center. In there, they're showing a video on a place called the Air Force Academy. Now, while I had planned on following my family's history of military service, I had never considered the academy. But today I decide I'm going to apply to that place. So I head straight for my guidance counselor's office to tell him my plan. My guidance counselor, cleverly disguised as the head football coach, laughs. Miss Barrett, your grades aren't good enough. Your standardized test scores aren't high enough. Community college is a more realistic goal for you. His words of what I can do create a narrow runway that make it seemingly impossible for me to land at the Air Force Academy. But I decide to apply anyway. And I soon find out that he is absolutely right. My grades weren't good enough, my standardized test scores weren't high enough, and soon after high school I was, in fact, enrolled at the local community college. While wallowing in self-pity, a flyer for a preparatory school comes in the mail, and it says that 83% of the people who go to this school and then reapply to the military academies get in. My sister Barb says if they had allowed women at the military academies when I was going to college, I would have done anything to apply. One casual comment made by someone I admire widens the runway in front of me, changing the course of my life. I attend the prep school, I reapply to the Air Force Academy, and I become part of the 83%. We need to check our crew because our lives are filled with toxic people and supporters. Inventory your network, establish, and then respect emotional boundaries accordingly. If you're not a smoker but you're near one, you move, you distance yourself. The same goes for toxic people in our lives and screaming babies. And for the tribe of support doing life alongside us, stick by them and support them right back. We have responsibilities as members of other people's crews. So now you are ready for the ever-evolving fight for centerline, which will bring balance and equilibrium to your lives. The crosswinds of life will challenge your commitment and focus, and it may seem simple to pull your head out, step over it, and check your crew. And it can be that simple as imagining a barn over your runway. Thank you.